A few years ago, I planted this terrarium and I didn't quite understand how to properly care for it. My main mistake was that I assumed that it would be completely self-sustaining after initially watering it, and I also don't think that I kept it in a place with enough sunlight. This is a closed terrarium, but it's not sealed. So eventually it dried out too much, and before I realized it, everything except for a little bit of moss died. I think that I've learned from my mistakes, and I want to replant it and start again. But since I have a bad track record of keeping indoor plants alive, I don't quite trust myself enough to actually spend money on new plants. So I want to see if I can find some plants around the house that might be able to do well inside of a terrarium. The first plant that caught my eye was this native fern called ebony spleenwort. I thought it would make a nice centerpiece for the terrarium, but I ultimately decided that it will grow a little too quickly and its shape might look a little awkward if I pruned it to fit. So I planted this fern inside the shade garden to see how it will do instead. I have some Boston ferns in pots and decided to divide some of this for the terrarium. This fern apparently grows slowly, and with it being so bushy, I think that I'll be able to keep it pruned to fit inside the terrarium for a while. Another fern that I want to add is this sad looking rabbitfoot fern. This was a beautiful plant that I had kept on a high shelf and forgot to water. I hope to give it a new life with care and attention inside the terrarium. As a third plant, I decided to harvest some field clover because I like these yellow blooms. I heard that clover should do well inside of a terrarium, but it could quickly take over, so I'll have to prune it back occasionally. Then, of course, every terrarium needs plenty of moss. I first rinsed off some of its extra soil, then it was finally time to assemble the new terrarium. This week, I'm continuing my work towards planting a hedge along the top of this retaining wall, with cuttings from some dwarf boxwoods. Of the 30 cuttings that I started earlier in the spring, about 6 of them seem to have definitely rooted and have new growth. I've heard that here in planting zone 8A, late spring might actually have a higher success rate for propagation. I'm collecting more cuttings and I'm removing some old ones that seem to be dead. At this point, I have about 60 cuttings in the propagation trays and 4 more in water. I'll keep collecting cuttings in my free time until I have at least 37 successfully rooted boxwoods for the future hedge. We've been traveling quite a bit in the last week, so my work in the garden has slowed down. But I have at least decided what I want to plant here in front of this established rosemary bush. I transplanted some sage that I had planted too close to some tomatoes, and a blue bedder salvia that popped up away from the main group. It feels a little boring to plant so many types of salvia all in one place, but I think that it will look nice for this season while I work to build up my plant collection. The last thing that I planted this week was some native butterfly milkweed. This will bloom with bright orange flowers, and I hope to collect seeds from it this year to establish more plants to attract monarch butterflies to the garden. It's peach season and we stopped by a farmer's market this week. Today all of them ripened at once. I want to try out a peach dessert, and this is a simple baked peaches recipe. Admittedly, these peaches were not very sweet on their own, so I topped them with a little bit of melted butter, cinnamon, and brown sugar before baking at 350 degrees for 25 minutes. We had a surprise thunderstorm this afternoon. The sunflowers were unsupported and were sadly knocked down. I set up some tomato cages to help them. I feel silly for not thinking to do this sooner. The mammoth sunflowers are already nearly 4 feet tall, and it's hard to believe that they're not even halfway done growing yet.